As we all know, the problem with traditional advertising has been engagement. That television advertising, which dominated, advertisers are now saying, why should I spend on a cost per thousand basis for a show that reaches 10 million people when my research shows me that my advertisement may reach 2 or 3 million people? Because we know during the commercial that people are now in the kitchen, in the bathroom, changing the channel, muting the set, scanning through the commercial. Advertisers now say, we'll pay even more, but only for people who are engaged. We also know the rules of digital advertising are much more complex and they're evolving, and we'll get to a little bit of that. So everything seems to be coming apart, disaggregating, the old rules not working, and then what changed everything was broadband. And broadband cannot be overemphasized in its importance. Let's talk about broadband and television for a moment. Our work shows, if you remember back to the dial-up era, the average household, the average person in a home would go online 2 to 3 times a day during dial-up for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. We would aggregate our tasks. We'd write down on the back of an envelope all the things we wanted to do because we viewed dialing up as a big deal. And if we logged off forgetting to do something, we'd get very frustrated at ourselves, even though the act of dialing up only took 30 seconds. And what we did with dial-up is most of us who had the option, we moved the internet into a back bedroom or an office, a backstage part of the home. And it was generally 20 or 30 minutes spent not talking to the other people in the household, although they could have wandered back into the backstage and talked to you. And it was generally 20 or 30 minutes spent not watching television, although you could have had a television in the backstage of the home as well. Broadband comes along, and with its always on, now we see the average person in a household is online 30 to 70 times a day for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. We don't have to aggregate our tasks because we don't have to dial up. It's always on. We can go to the PC or the tablet, or the BlackBerry or iPhone, do 2 or 3 things, and then if we remember something else a minute later, it's there waiting for us. All of a sudden, with broadband, the internet didn't displace family conversation in the household. We would actually go online during the natural rhythms or breaks of family conversations. And where television was concerned, whereas dial-up was 20 to 30 minutes spent not watching television, with broadband, now we were watching television during the commercials, before the program started. We were working around it. Broadband has turned out to be the best friend television has ever had. And incidentally, also, as we got comfortable with broadband, we didn't want the internet in the backstage of the home. We didn't want to walk to the back bedroom 40, 50, 60 times a day. We brought the internet to where we were. We moved it into our living rooms, family rooms, and the most humanly networked room in the house, which I'm sure most of you know, the kitchen. The kitchen is the room in which people first stop when they enter the home. It's the room in which almost all women leave their purses. If you're going to leave a message for another person in the household, you almost always do so in the kitchen. The kitchen also contains the family art gallery, also known as the refrigerator. So all of a sudden, we were integrating the internet into our lives, and now where television is concerned, television, although we should create a new term instead of television, television for most people means the set in the home on a schedule, and television now just means audio and video, and YouTube is as much television as 4 in France is. But we should have a new term, but we're not going to. But our work shows that people will watch television on a small screen in their pocket or purse, and not just 2 or 3 minute sports clips or news packages, but they'll watch 30 and 60 and 90-minute shows, sometimes straight through if they're stuck at the airport. Sometimes we'll watch a 60-minute show in 8 or 10 parts. keep in mind that at the same time as we're putting these little screens in our pockets and purses, we're putting bigger and better screens in our homes than we've ever had before. The gap between the home and the theater has never been so narrow. The time gap has never been so short. And we will save our favorite content for the big screen. I did a talk at the Cannes Lions 2 years ago, and there was a Canadian in the audience, and he raised his hand and said, "I'm a Canadian, and I'm a big hockey fan," which is pretty redundant if you think about it. And he said, "Why would I ever watch a hockey game on a mobile phone?" And the answer, the same one for the World Cup here, is you won't. If you love hockey, you'll seek out the biggest and best screen you can find, unless you can't get to the big screen, and it's more important to see it sooner rather than later. Television couldn't grow until broadband because for you in France and us in America and most of the industrialized world, for the last 30 years, television has dominated our at-home awake time. Most of us turn the set on the moment we enter the home, leave it on till we go to sleep. Some of us go to sleep with it on, and some of us leave it on when we're not at home so that people think we are at home. So television couldn't grow until it left the home. Not left, but went out of the home as well as staying in the home. And now, television never existed outside the home until now. The exception was the hospital. If you're sick, that was your home. The bar, for some people, that's their home. But now we're watching television at the airport, waiting for a flight, on the airplane itself, in the back seat of our cars, hopefully not the front seat while we're driving. Television's exploding with growth. It's becoming our constant companion. Right now, who's our constant companion? If you're stuck at Charles de Gaulle waiting for a flight and it's late, most of us don't pull out a newspaper or a book. We pull out our mobile phones and start calling people.